You know, I have enormous admiration and respect for Dr. Scotty McCallum. You know, he's contributed so much at UAB during his tenure there, and has really been, in many ways, responsible for people like myself and also Dr. John Kirkland remaining at the UAB. And I'm very grateful to you, Scott. Thank you. You know, I was kind of wondering what I should be talking about at this luncheon. And of course, it's occurred to me, you know, that obviously I'm a heart surgeon. Unusually, perhaps, I'm in love with heart surgery. And today's Valentine's Day. So that all fits together, and what I'd like to do, really, is just make a few comments about 3 areas of heart surgery, and they are congenital heart surgery, so that's children's defects, valve surgery, and coronary artery surgery, and hopefully we'll have enough time to entertain any questions from you all. So you know, heart surgery began at the Mayo Clinic in 1955, so it's 51 years old. What that means is the use of the heart-lung machine began then. Open heart surgery is a phrase that really means an operation where the heart-lung machine is employed. It doesn't necessarily mean that the heart's actually open, but it means that the patient's heart and lungs is supported by the heart-lung machine. The heart-lung machine really has 2 components. One is a pump. And the pumps that are used today are roller pumps. And what they actually do is to squeeze tubing as they spin. The tubing contains the patient's blood and is connected to the patient. And so it forces the blood through the tubing. The faster the pump goes, the more blood flow goes. The slower it goes, the less blood flow goes. And so all of that is calibrated to the size of the patient so that the proper flow can be established to support the tissues of the body. The second component is the oxygenator. And what that does is it takes over the function of the lungs and it puts oxygen in the blood. And originally, the oxygenators were re-sterilized. They were steel and glass objects, and they were re-sterilized, and so used over and over and over again. And then in the early 1960s, the bubble oxygenator was made commercially, and that's a disposable device. So this is the Chamber of Commerce, and you understand the commercial value of that is absolutely astronomical, because it's a single-use device. It comes in a carton, you take it out, it's sterile, you hang it on a hook by the pump, and you fill it with fluid, and it's now going to take over the function of the lungs. And what we use today is also disposable, but it's actually a membrane oxygenator as opposed to a bubble oxygenator. When heart surgery began at the Mayo Clinic in 1955, it was children who were operated upon. Because, you know, there were no heart valves, so you couldn't replace a patient's valve because you had no device to place. So the defects that were focused on were children's defects. And children's defects there's a gigantic spectrum of them and their complexity. So some of them could consist of a hole in the heart, and it could be in the atria, sometimes very large like this, or it could be in the ventricle, maybe the size of the diameter of my finger. And those types of things are considered rather simple defects to the heart surgeon. They're never simple to the parents, that's for sure. But the success rates with them are astronomically high, and they do convert, closure of them, converts a child who may or may not be symptomatic into a person who's functionally normal with a normal life expectancy. Other types of children's heart defects cause blueness. And blueness, of course, means there's not enough oxygen in the blood. Some of those defects are enormously complicated, where the main arteries come reversed from the heart. They're born that way. So the artery, the aorta that delivers blood from the body, it's connected to the wrong pumping chain. And over the years, there's many, many defects, actually, and time doesn't permit really going into them. But over the years, the treatment of them has gone from two-stage approach, where an initial operation was done to make the person better, and then when he was bigger, one would return and do a corrective operation. To nowadays, almost all defects can be repaired at one time, to doing surgery at younger and younger and younger age. So some defects 25 years ago would not be corrected until a child was 5 years old. Today it would be corrected when he's 3 months old. So big difference. You know, I can't tell you the enormous satisfaction that a person like myself feels bringing a blue child in the operating room and wheeling out a pink child. I mean, it's spectacular. So I've enjoyed doing children's heart surgery over the years enormously. And the other side of that coin is what happens to children with these defects who are untreated is terrible. Some defects, the mortality rate's 90% within the first year of life. And with surgery, may have a near normal life expectancy. So it's a profound effect on an ill person. I want to just go on and make a few comments about valve surgery. So, you know, we have two types of valves that we use, the tissue valves and the mechanical valves. And the first mechanical valve came out in the early 1960s, and it was a ball inside a cage. I don't know if there's any people in the plumbing business here, but valves work like the plumbers use check valves, and that's what these are, but they're, of course, very refined in their manufacture. But what I mean is they open, and then they can just close. And it's the force, the driving force behind the flap or whatever it is that opens it. So the first valve was a ball and a cage valve. And it was literally that. There was a base to it, and it had a cloth ring around it so it could be sewn into the heart. And then it had a wire cage, and sitting inside that wire cage was a celastic ball. So when the heart contracted, the blood, the force of the blood, pushed the ball up. The blood came around the ball and went through the main artery into the body. The valves we use today are not like that. They're relatively flat. They don't have any cage. And they have two leaflets that open like this and close. The valve we use at UAB, and it's the commonest used valve in the world, is the St. Jude valve. So it's very amusing to me to reflect in about 1973, a man named Manny Villafana came to my office, and Manny, I'm talking about this because this is the Chamber of Commerce. And Manny came to my office, and he actually was an entrepreneur from Minneapolis. And he developed the St. Jude Medical Corporation. And he came to my office because he wanted to sell me this valve. He wanted me to use this new valve, the St. Jude valve. And I looked at it, and I thought it was great, you know. But it hadn't had any test of time, that was for sure. And so I had no plans to use it, but thought it was very nice. Well, Manny, he looked at me and he said, you know, Al, he said, you may or may not use this valve, but I can tell you for sure one thing you should do: buy the stock of my company. Well, I didn't use his valve, and I didn't buy the stock, but it was the fastest growing stock on the New York Stock Exchange for the next 10 years, so I guess I kind of made a mistake. To move on to tissue valves, which are another example of American commercial ingenuity, let me say that. So, the first tissue valve that was popularized was the pig valve, and you all probably heard of it. Well, the pig valve is actually the aortic valve of the pig. And it's taken out of the heart, and it's mounted on what we call a stent. You could think of it as a frame. It's a sewing ring with a hole in it, and it has 3 struts, and they take the valve and put it in there, and they sew it on the frame. And then the surgeon sews it into the patient. Now, these valves come in all different sizes, of course, to match the patient. So when you think about that, you think, well, you need 1 pig to get 1 valve, right? Wrong. In order to get a good pig valve using the strict criteria that these companies employed, they needed 15 pig hearts in order to get 1 really good valve. So you know what they did? They went into the pig farming business. Can you believe this? And they had these huge pig farms because they needed not only to have all these pigs to get the proper valve, but they wanted to be able to supervise the harvesting of the valve. Okay, well now you know you can add up some dollars here. You need 15 pigs to get 1 valve. That's a real problem. And you, of course, you've got to inspect each one. So what happens? First of all, the pig valve lasted for about 10 years, and then it had to be removed and replaced. The advantage over the mechanical valve, which has great durability, lasts for 300 years, the advantage of the pig valve is that it doesn't require anticoagulation with Coumadin, it doesn't require blood tests, but it doesn't have great durability. Okay, so a change occurred. A new type of animal was used to obtain a valve from, and it was the cow. But it was not the cow's aortic valve, it was the pericardium, which is the sac around the heart. You know, so a cow's pretty large, and the heart of the cow is pretty large, and so the sac around the heart of the cow is very large. And from this sac, which is now, if you cut it open and spread it out, you've got quite a big piece of material. From this sheet of material, they're going to cut out little semicircles, so to speak, and each one would represent a leaflet, and sew it onto that frame or stent that I was talking about before. So instead of it being the aortic valve, it's actually tissue cut from the sac around the cow's heart. Well, now, just imagine. First of all, the cow's valve prepared that way lasts 15 years instead of 10. So it's way better than the pig valve in terms of durability. And on the one hand, you needed 15 pigs to get 1 valve. Now, you get 15 valves from 1 cow because of the size of the sac around the heart of the cow. American commercial ingenuity. But ladies and gentlemen, did the price change? Of course not. And incidentally, a heart valve like that costs about $4,000. That's not what the hospital charges you, that's what they pay for it. So, it's interesting. Well, you know, I was going to talk a little bit about coronary artery surgery, but I think maybe I would really like to entertain any questions that you all might have. So I'm very glad to try to answer anything you might have questions about, not just the material I talked on, but anything at all pertinent to heart surgery. Yes, ma'am.
It seems like I heard that you were retiring or retired.
Well, isn't it terrible? But that is true. I'm planning to retire at the end of June.
My question is, what do you do?
Oh, oh, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just learned from this table that about 12 years ago you did surgery on a little boy named Matt Sutherland, who was my inspiration to start the Today's Marathon. So thanks to you, we wouldn't have to do that. So I didn't realize the impact of one person would be so big. So it's very nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, sir.
There's a new procedure that is being tested in South America about coming in under the arm to the chest. Is that going to happen?
Limited access surgery is becoming more and more popular, and I think that as time passes, it will become a standard type of operation.